I've had a couple of. I have two number ones. Everybody in our culture seems to think that they need to tell everybody that cutting hot line is the most exciting and the biggest adrenaline rush and the funnest. And I don't know what's wrong with them, but I don't think that there's anything too terribly exciting about cutting line. I'm more of a get more excitement, and I think there's a lot more learning experience to be had when it comes to burn shows. And I've been on a couple of fires just in the last 3 years of my career where we've gone to places where the temperatures were extremely hot, and we're fortunate enough to land night shifts, and all of the really hard work and all of the prep and all the line construction and that sort of stuff was taken care of during the day, and we were fortunate enough to work the entire 14-day assignment and had night shifts, and we burned all of the hand line and all of the dozer line and all of the perimeter that was put in by the day shift resources. So we didn't spend any time doing anything other than waking up, eating, getting what we needed for the night to burn all night long. We'd go out and burn all night long for the entire time. So, and I've had 2 shifts like that. One was in southern Arizona, one was in northern California, and by far the best shifts. The biggest learning experiences, the biggest eye-openers, some of the most extreme fire behavior that we've seen in 2 different fuel types, all the way from the timber country to the southern Arizona desert type sage and mesquite and type fuel types, and some of the most extreme fire behavior. But both 14-day assignments were extremely successful, and everybody learned something from it for sure.
Essentially, there's a lot that goes into putting on a backfiring operation or a burnout operation, all the way from getting the right approvals to proper crew configuration, additional resource support, and that sort of thing, depending on how extensive the burnout operations are. And essentially, on any one shift of what I described before, we were essentially burning entire divisions at a time. So there was a lot of resources involved, probably 3 or 4 additional crews, a lot of water support with engines, water tenders, and that sort of thing, and our medical support and whatnot. So, when we set up to do something like that, there's a briefing that goes on just within the crew, and usually the overhead's responsible for facilitating that briefing and describing what's going to go on as far as where our stopping and starting points are, what kind of burn patterns we're going to use, who the lighters are going to be, who the holders are going to be, and who the responsible parties are for each of those, so everybody knows who to contact if something goes good, bad, or indifferent. And if we need to call support to suppress spot fires that may result from anything we're doing and that sort of thing, if we need to change burn patterns and whatnot. So we typically like to have our newest folks doing the lighting itself. One of our more experienced firefighters to a squad leader type doing the lighting boss or doing the ignition specialist, or filling the ignition specialist role, and then we'll have a squad leader or a captain doing the holding, coordinating, and then usually myself or one of the other experienced captains will do the burn boss role and coordinate with all the other resources and division supervisor to ensure that the operations are successful. But we put the new folks on the torches or in the lighting role because you usually see their eyes get really, really big while they're trying to put everything they just learned in the classroom at the beginning of the year into practice in a matter of a shift. And so it's really exciting to see that. At the same time, it's really a good positive thing for us as experienced folks to be able to teach them while they're going through that process, and to be able to explain some things as we're going through it, especially if the burnout operations are more calculated and not so last minute. We have a little bit more time to teach and facilitate some training while we're going through the process. So it's always good for us to do that. And we'll mix it up a little bit, throw some of our more experienced crewmen in there too, because they always get a kick out of it, and their adrenaline always gets going, even though they know a little bit more, so that the new folks see what they're going to end up like if they stick around. The fire behavior can vary depending on what kind of result we're looking for. If we're looking for 100% consumption, which is typical on a wildland incident, We'll use more heat. We'll change up the burn patterns as necessary to make sure we get 100% consumption. And typically in the summer times, if we're on a wildfire, it means conditions are extremely hot and dry, and we don't usually have a hard time once we touch fire to the ground getting complete consumption. And fire behavior in the extreme varies from fully sustained independent crown fires where fire gets up into the tops of the trees and will run completely through the tops of the trees and consume everything, to independent running crown fires in the brush. And we get the same kind of extreme fire behavior in Southern California that we do in Northern California, depending on what the precipitation levels have been like and what the fuel moistures are like. And this year, I think we're going to see some of the most extreme for sure. But we usually see the most radical fire behavior when we're creating it. So it's interesting. You're not dealing with all the elements during the day that you are at night. I mean, each one of them has its, I guess, pros and cons, but I think there's a lot more pros at night because you're not dealing with all the elements that are present during the day. Typically during the day, the weather's a little bit hotter and drier. The RHs are a little bit lower, and so it makes things a little bit more technical. There's a little bit more coordination that needs to go into it, a lot more communication, and you have your windows of opportunity are a little bit smaller if you want to avoid the peak burn periods. So when you're doing things at night and your RHs typically go up and you have a little bit lighter breezes coming to down slopes, down canyons, as opposed to up canyons during the day, the temperatures get a little bit cooler. The visibility factor is the one thing that's a little just not in your favor, but at the same time the conditions are a little bit better at night, and it makes things a little bit easier. Things are a little bit more controlled if there was such a thing, and you can always use the daytime hours to gather all of your intelligence work and do all of your scouting, and then you're not so blind going into the nighttime hour. But we typically prefer to do things at night because we can facilitate a little bit better control.